Máš rád roguelike hry a chceš něco pořádného? Něco, co s tebou zamete podlahu, nabídne hluboký systém přizpůsobení a parádní stylizovanou grafiku? Tak to tady pro tebe mám hru Heretical. Krásný dobrý den, dámy a pánové, začínáme výběrem postavy. Máme na výběr celkem dvě, máme tady bojovníka a máme tady střelce. Samozřejmě další klasy budou vývojáři přidávat a my si je budeme postupně odemykat. No jak už vidíš, tady máme sílu, dexterity, intelligence, vitality, máme tady charge, máme tady, je toho tady poměrně hodně. A myslím si, že je naprosto jasné, že tahle hra půjde pořádně do hloubky, tak jak to máme rádi. Vrhneme se teda rovnou do hry za lučišníka, kterého jsem ještě nehrál, takže ho budeme prozkoumávat společně. Nicméně základ hry je velice jednoduchý. Objevíme se zde. Pokaždé, když umřeš, objevíš se zde. No a naším cílem je zajistit, aby moje životy neklesly na nulu. To je víceméně celé. Nicméně je tady řada dalších systémů, jako třeba tady tenhle curse, což znamená, že čím více budeme zabíjet naše nepřátele, jako třeba tady tohle neřádá, patrně, máme dash, můžeme si dát pozor, tak se nám nabíjí tady tenhle darkness. No a jakmile zabijeme dostatečný počet nepřátel, tak se ta temnota rozroste do nepřátel a budou všichni silnější. V rámci mojí klasy tady máme hromadu věcí jako crit chance, decay damage, máme tady physical damage, určitě si můžeš představit. No a neposlední řadě tady máme hvězdy, pomocí kterých my si můžeme odemykat a přidávat skilly, ale musíme být tam na správném místě. Máme tady profesí, což jsou takové questy, které mi dávají odměny, odemykají mi různé skilly. No a pak samozřejmě tady máme kompendium, za to budeme hrát. My teďka tady máme celkem 3 charge na našem lučišníkovi. Když hraješ za bojovníka, je to poměrně standardní. A pak tady samozřejmě máme levely, které získáme zabíjením nepřátel a dalších věcí. A poté v neposlední řadě samozřejmě, čím více budeme zabíjet nepřátel, tím je větší šance, že nám padne nějaká ta pořádná sranda. Už jsem stihl dostat jeden hit, to bude velmi rychlej run. A jakmile máme, koukej na to, střílím 2 šípy, protože můj aktivní skill Dead Eye mi umožňuje targetovat všechny nepřátelé, kteří jsou v okolí. Samozřejmě hraní za bojovníka, za lučišníka je diametrálně odlišné. V tuhle chvíli půjdeme přímo sem, otevřeme si bednu a z téhle bedny nám padne, jak vidíme, modrý item. Ten si můžeme equipnout a teďka pozor, tady tohle je náš starý item a tady tohle je náš nový item. Naším cílem je vždycky se samozřejmě vybavit úplně co nejlépe, jenomže pamatuj, že ten item, který si neschováš, nebo respektive který nechceš, tak ten ti nezůstane v inventáři, ten je navždy pryč, prodá se za ty 2 penízky, což znamená tady vidíš +2 a jsme nyní bohatí. Takže otázka zní, můžeme si už teďka odemknout tohle? Ne, stále ne. My máme ten skill, pomocí kterého teda zraníme více do nepřátel najednou, což znamená, že to se nám obzvlášť tady bude trošičku hodit a budeme se muset opravdu dát pozor, aby jsme dostávali zbytečný damage. Ty moje skilly dávají i dokonce nějaký ten slow. Na druhou stranu za bojovníka mám tady s tímhle lučišníkem nahoře vždycky problém, z toho důvodu, že já tam na něho nedošáhnu, že jo. A tím pádem teďka by to mělo být trošku jednodušší, ale očividně stejně zase nedošáhnu, takže to je úplně jedno. Výborně, pojďme se podívat dál. Co jsme dostali? Dostali jsme bracery, které mi dávají attack speed a ještě nějaký stat, který jsem teďka si v tuhle chvíli přečetl, ale to je úplně jedno. Lučišník číslo 1, lučišník číslo 2, máme tady další loot a opatrně kupředu. Jsem velice zvědavý, jak budeme bojovat s tím prvním bossem za tady tuhle klasu. Protože, co si budeme nalhávat, mám takové tušení, že to bude, protože ta arena je velice malá, mám takové tušení, že to bude celkem divoké. A tahle hra tě neuvěřitelně odměňuje za průzkum, což znamená, když se vydáš mimo cestu, kam si myslíš, že bys měl jít, skvělý. Máme tady 9 magic resistance, to se nám teďka 100% hodit nebude, ale to nám vůbec nevadí, protože tihle bojovníci budou proti nám bojovat pouze pomocí mečů a šípů, žádný magic nás v tuhle chvíli nečeká. A dostali jsme level, no a je to tady, dámy a pánové. A ve stylu všech Vampire Survivors like her si můžeme nyní vybrat. Máme tady spoustu věcí, můžeme si vzát z Brna, vzít. Pokaždé, když dáme damage, zvýší svůj crit chance a crit damage. Kdykoliv hitneš crit chance, ano, ten bonus samozřejmě ztratíš. A buff, jo, takhle, tohle celkem cool, budeme kritovat. Pak máme Magma Orb, což je víceméně taková klasika, pokaždé, když máme nějaký cooldown, když to 5 vteřin, ano, bude čekat, tak následně vystřelíme ohnivý bolt, což je v pohodě, a Spark periodicky dává damage. Já si dám tady tenhle Death Gamble, to mi připadá celkem zajímavý, a nám se teda bude nabíjet tady tahle věc, crit chance per stack. Samozřejmě, čím to budeme více upgradeovat, tím to bude lepší, což znamená, že teďka máme 1, když zabijeme tohle dalšího cápka, tak máme 4, máme 5, až nakonec vysloveně nebudeme mít jinou možnost než giga critnout. A to bude celkem zajímavý, protože levely tenhle skill si myslím, že bude dávat velký smysl. Tak, tady tenhle lučišník už tady není, máme tady jednu bednu, máme tady druhou bednu. No a pomaličku, ale jestli se blížíme ke konci tady této tutoriálové zóny, protože, věř tomu nebo ne, to je celkem dobrý, viděl jsi to? To je celkem dobrý, věř tomu nebo ne, tady tohle je taková seznamovací část, kterou si musíš projet pokaždé, když máš tady, když tady budeš začínat tuhle hru. Protože opravdu Já teďka si úplně nejsem jistý, co tady tohle dělá. Když zemřeš, tak je konec. 9 magic resistance a proc chance, to se nám teďka nehodí, protože nemáme žádný proction. Skill damage si necháme náš původní a máme teda 9 penízků, které můžeme směnit u našeho obchodníka. Pomocí Dead Eye skill trefíme oba dva cápky najednou, no a teďka už se jenom dostaneme do bezpečí, abychom získali nějaký ten prostor. No a teď na nás čeká boss fight. Máme tady prsten, frost resistance, perfektní, no a teď tady máme našeho bojovníka, Undying Champion a uvidíme, jak tohle budeme zvládat. On není zas tak rychlý v té první fázi. Myslím, že ten crit chance mi tady bude velice pomáhat. To znamená 23, 22, 65, no dobrý den a nashledanou. Se mi velice líbí, co je tady tahle díka? Jo, to je ten reduction, jakmile krytneme. OK, cool, to je moc pěkný. Ta první fáze je v pohodě, ta druhá bude samozřejmě to. Nicméně tady máme fantastickou příležitost, co si můžeme vysvětlit ještě jednu věc, a to je break bar nebo armor bar, říkejte tomu jak chcete. Ta bílá čára pod životy našeho nepřítele znamená to, že když já dám dostatečné poškození nějakou zbraní, která je k tomu vhodná, většinou to krásně dělají nějaké tupé zbraně, přijde mi, nebo nějaké velké kladiva, šípy tady moc nedělají, tak se nepřítel dostane do omráčení. To omráčení netrvá zas až tak dlouho, ale ve stejnou chvíli samozřejmě, ve stejnou chvíli samozřejmě je vždycky příjemné, když toho nepřítele dokážeš nějakým způsobem zabít a omráčit. Tak, dostali jsme hromadu věcí a splnili jsme si dokonce prophecies, což znamená, že máme fulfilled Pale Wind, pomocí kterého jsme dostali unique look, který můžeme získat najít nebo něco dalšího. A v tuhle chvíli to bylo to další, bylo... Teď si úplně nejsem úplně 100% jistý, ale máme tady nový skill. Otázka zní, chceme udělat toxic trap? Ano, když jdeš, položíš past. Musíme. To bude strašně moc fajn. Tak, tady se dostaneme nahoru a jsme v bezpečné zóně. Samozřejmě vezmeme si nějaký raritu. Asi zatím ne. Máme tady necklace, OK, který mi zvýší damage taken, ale zvýší damage dealt. Co chceme tady tohle dělat? Tahle hra ti dá hodně podobných možností a jak říkám, vůbec se s tebou nebude mazat, zamete s tebou podlahu a ty vůbec nebudeš vědět, co máš dělat. Takže dáme si all resistances, to bude podle mě mnohem lepší. No a tady jsme v bezpečné zóně, stále jsem nepřišel na to, jak otevřít tady tuhle věc, aby jsme to mohli skipnout, ale hádám, že na to přijde čas. No a tady máme obchodníka a máme tady cápka, pomocí kterého si můžeme podívat na ty prophecies. My jsme splnili ten Collector of Hearts a Pale Wind, takže se podíváme a získali jsme jednu hotovou kartičku. V neposlední řadě by tady měla být i ta druhá ready, že jo? Ano, přesně tak, máme tady ten unique look, skvělý. A pak samozřejmě tady máme myriádu dalších, které můžeme plnit. To jsou takové fajn questíčky, myslím si, že to je hezký, že to není jako vykřičník, víš co? Jako, dobře, byl to vykřičník, ale rozumíš mi, je to moc hezky udělané. No a pak tady je samozřejmě fajn podívat se na to, co tady máme. To znamená, zabiješ 100 enemies, když zabiješ ohněm nebo něčím takovým. Ono většinou to nemusíš zas tak moc řešit teďka za začátku. To důležité. Zlatá. Adamovská? Ne. Jsme dostali dokonce XPčka, ale. Tak, no a samozřejmě pak tady strom dovedností, to tady musí být. Záleží, co budeme hrát, vždycky se ti to resetne, takže ber si to na tu jednu specifickou klasu. A samozřejmě, čím více máš bodů, tím je to divočejší. 15 crit strike damage, jo, tady máš, vole, co ti tady dává? Každý point dexterity ti dá 2 životy a physical damage, no prostě úplně šílený. My vzhledem k tomu, že hrajeme toho archera, tak si dáme movement speed a dexteritu a dáme si zvýšený attack range, proč ve finále ne? Máme tyhle 2 hvězdičky, budeme jich nacházet ještě poměrně dost a teď si dáme teda nějaký ten level. Toxic trap nebo death gamble, mně se celkem líbí, že z tohle bude stackovat mnohem více, takže pojďme do téhle strany. No a pak tady máme obchodníka, máme 23 peněz, což není úplně moc, ale možná tady, ne, není tady nic super zajímavého, takže... Ono ani banish, ani reroll mi nějak zas tak moc nepomůže, takže si asi koupím helmu a půjdu pryč. A teď se podíváme, že dostanu helmu, že jo? Dáme si tohle. Já jsem měl nejdříve udělat tohle, já jsem trouba. Já jsem zapomněl, že jsem si nevybral ty itemy a tím pádem bych dostal více do goldu. Máme tady obouruční magický meč, bereme. To jsem nechtěl, OK. Magická hulka, fajn. Takže, co je důležité, je, že my teďka tady máme nějaké ty zbraně. To znamená, že máme ten základní zbraň, meč v tuhle chvíli, a pak tady máme magickou hulku, pomocí které můžeme střílet. Samozřejmě, já si teďka nejsem jistý, jestli to bude se počítat s tímhle. Příště můžeme celou tuhle část skipnout, výborně. Dobrý den, úplně tvoje maso smrdí jako kletba. On je taky divný tady tenhle cípek. Je to takové trošku zvláštní, no. Nicméně dostali jsme nové profesi. Takže my teďka můžeme hrát s mečem, nikdy nám k tomu vůbec nebrání, samozřejmě ty dexterity bonusy na attack range, to úplně není ono, ale pořád máme hulku a můžeme to vyzkoušet. Tady mi to ukazuje, že to je můj 3. run. No a teď jsme tady. Minule jsem umřel přímo tady. Tady. Ne. Byl jsem tady a spadl jsem. Zkoušel jsem, jestli je ve hře fall damage. A věř mu nebo ne? Je. Takže vyzkoušíme, jak funguje ten... OK, vypadá to, že veškeré skilly, které máme, se mi scalujou i s touhle hulkou. Triggerujeme 2 targety, dáváme crit damage a dokonce se mi zdá... dokonce zlatý item, nice. Co to bylo? Ej. Dokonce se mi zdá... Ano, to je dobré. Pojďme se podívat teda na další itemy. Štít. Chceme štít? Počkej, já teď asi nejsem jistý. Pojďme si ho vzít. A máme tady tuhle helmu a můžeme si dát Windseeker Skills. Já nevím, jestli máme Windseeker, ale já to potřebuju. Mi se líbí ta helma mnohem víc. My se můžeme podívat na ty skilly, které máme v rámci skillu a můžeme se tady mrknout. My teďka aktuálně máme tady tohle a je to buff. Takže jsem vzal něco, co vůbec nemám mít, ale to je objevování v téhle hře je velká parádička. Tak, my máme teďka hůlku a štít, jak Harry Potter, ty borděle, nevím.
Hey, what's up guys? It's your boy Bofa, and if you put your reading glasses on, you already know that today we're gonna see if we can beat Dark Souls 2 only using bows. Also, I'm gonna give a random commenter one of these Iron Fist Alexander models from the hit game Dark Souls 7, and I'll pick a random comment after 1 week, so make sure you check your replies. Alright, first thing we have to do is make our character, and obviously you're gonna want to pick the Bandit class since it's the only one that starts with a bow and a generous 25 arrows. And for the starting gift, I chose the seed of a tree giant because the description says it's inedible and I wanted to test that. Our first priority is finding a way to buy some arrows because surprisingly 25 of them just isn't enough to get through the entire game, and since this dipshit lost his key, we need to go get that before he'll sell us any. So I hustled my way over to this lady, but unfortunately we need 1,000 V-Bucks to buy the key from her, so instead I mosey on over to the Dragon Rider and... Once we defeat him, we now have enough to buy the battle pass and a metric ass ton of arrows, but don't use his boss soul just yet because you can trade it for a pretty good bow later on. First thing I did was take out a bunch of these guys, which does take quite a while. Probably would have been faster if my aim wasn't dog shit, but I did find this fella, and after spamming through his dialogue talking about Chief Keef ain't about this, Chief Keef ain't about that, he will give you a key to the mansion in Majula, so you can get an Estus shard pretty early. After that, I took on the slightly early version of the Pursuer in the hopes that I would get the ring that boosts your attack damage, but if you die here, he does move to his regular arena, which is like only 5 feet away, but still. And this fight sucks ass. As you can see, I am not doing very much damage, and if you've noticed, my bow is already at like half durability, and you bet that that shit broke about halfway through the fight and made me do even less damage. Although it did only take me from 13 to 10 damage, so it's not that bad, but I still used almost 200 arrows in this fight, including all the iron ones, which might have been a stupid choice, but I didn't want to spend any more time on this fight than I had to, which was about 15 to 20 minutes in case you were wondering. After a bit more running around, I quickly got access to old Butthole Face, so let's take him out real quick. Once I started the fight, I was shocked, surprised, and or baffled about how much damage I was doing, and you can target either one of his legs or his chest, but sadly, neither of his buttholes. You do the same amount of damage regardless of where you hit him, so it really doesn't matter. All you really have to do is just run between his legs, wait for him to swing and miss, and just start unloading some arrows into him. Eventually, he rips off his arm and tries to whack you with it because why not? Doesn't really change the strategy, so you just keep doing the same thing. And I don't mean to pat myself on the back because I'd probably have to bend my arm really weird, but I did manage to get a no-hitter on this man.
Threw another no-hitter in this game. A perfect game.
Now that he's taken care of, we could head off to No Man's Wharf. Fun fact, did you know that you can just shoot the bell with your bow that calls the ship for the boss fight? Pretty neat, huh? And if you really want to, you could farm the enemies here to get the sea bow, which does have better range, but I didn't do that because I have free will and it didn't really seem worth it in my opinion. And through my journey so far, I've managed to snag a handful of fire arrows, and conveniently, the Flexile Sentry is allergic to fire, so I decided to take those in with me. This is another easy one due to there being a well-constructed pole right in the middle of the arena, so you can just circle around that the entire fight, wait for him to attack, shimmy out of the way, and start filling him up with some arrows. And I don't want to jerk myself off or anything because I'm in public using the McDonald's Wi-Fi right now, but this was yet another no-hitter, baby. Before I continue to the next location and get myself a shiny new bow, there's a couple other rings that I want to get that I honestly should have got earlier. For the first one, I head back to the Things Betwixt to take down this ogre and get the stone ring, which makes you do more poise damage, which will make it easier to stun enemies with arrows. Next, we head back to the Tower of Flame and head over to the old Dragon Rider. Again, this one wasn't too tough. I was getting my cheeks clapped at first for a little while until I figured out his attack pattern and basically just kept circling around the arena. If you're lucky, you'll get him stuck in this loop of doing this jumping slam attack attack over and over, and sometimes he'll even do this big old butt slam with some stanky dark fart aura coming out of him when he lands, but that's all there is to it. Upon beating him, you get the old Leo ring, which boosts your thrust counterattack damage, which basically means that you do extra damage anytime you shoot an enemy during an attack animation, which is a lot more often than you'd think. Eventually I make it to the Ruined Sentinels, and I saved those poison arrows that I bought earlier, which they happen to be weak to, so I equipped those before the fight. Definitely the toughest boss so far, but you can make it a lot easier if you do a few things. First, make sure that you're actually skilled enough to take down this first guy up on the platform, which isn't too bad. Just wait for him to do an attack, roll behind him, and shoot him with 1 or 2 poison arrows. Keep repeating that process until he gets poisoned, and then switch to your iron arrows since you don't want to waste your poison ones. He does lose a big chunk of health, but you do still have to finish him off with the regular arrows. And as soon as you do, aim your sights down at the other one down here and start firing as many poison arrows into him as you can before he leaps up onto the platform. At this point, I would just not stay locked on and try to track which one you've already damaged and poison him again as soon as he stops taking damage. Once he's dead, it's a one-on-one fight, and you don't really need the poison arrows anymore, unless you're bad. And that's basically it, and if you already used your poison arrows, then good luck, dipshit, because you played yourself. Now I just need to find the guy I can trade boss souls with so I can get a new bow, but first I need to find another fragrant branch of yore. So I buy the cat ring, hop skip down the well, skip hop down these structures, take some acid, watch the walls melt,
I'm freaking out, man.
and make my way through the entire upper gutter level. Roll through these barrels of high C, grab my loot, and free my homie from the pen, only for him to call me a fucking idiot.
Cursed one, you lack intelligence. Weak, so terribly weak.
Which is when I learned that you need at least 3 faith and 3 intelligence to trade with him. So I level my faith and trade the Dragon Rider's immortal soul for a bow. And it's decent. Would be better with more intelligence since it does magic damage, but it's good enough as is. And after upgrading our bow, it's time to face the gargoyles. It's another tough one. Definitely harder than the Ruined Sentinels because they are resistant to poison, but they are weak to magic. As soon as it started, I just shot the first one as many times as I could, and after that, it's just a whole lot of running in circles. Round and round and round we go. I use the Dragon Rider bow since, like I said, they're weak to magic, and I basically only had time to take 1 shot between attacks anyway, since there's like 3 enemies all trying to stab and burn you at the same time. I did almost die at one point because I got stuck on this statue while one of them was cooking me at 350 degrees for 5 seconds or until golden brown, but other than that, there's really not much else to it. It just takes forever. After the fight, make sure you grab this key for the Lost Sinner so you can light up the room and actually be able to lock on, because otherwise you're going to be free aiming the whole time. And despite me getting my ass absolutely ate up for the first half of the fight, this one was considerably easier than the last couple. Once again, I chose to use the Dragon Rider bow since she's weak to magic, and once I learned to dodge towards her instead of away from her like a rational human being would, it got a lot easier. I would basically just wait for her to do an attack, dodge into her, and give her a shot or 2. Rinse and repeat. GG, Lost Sinner. But not really. Now I could head towards the next area, and most of the enemies die in like 1 or 2 hits, except for this guy. And I'm gonna save the chariot boss for later so I can go take on the spooky skeleton lords real quick. I upgraded my short bow because I know this fight has a ton of spooky scary skeletons that chase and roll at you, so I want to stay nimble and light on my feet so I can quickly roll out of the way of all their spooky attacks. At first it's just you and 3 skeleton lords, and after I straight up pissed myself from the sheer spookiness of it all, I took the first one out and aggravated the roly boys. These are probably the most dangerous enemies in this fight, so I just hide behind this pillar and then slowly take them all out. For some reason, instead of taking out the other 2 skeleton lords one at a time, I decided to take them both out at the same time, which summons an absolute army of spooky skeletons since they always spawn on the death of one of the skeleton lords. So probably shouldn't have done that. Even though I goofed, it's still not that bad because your arrows are strong enough to stun them for a second, so most of the time they can't even catch up to you. Upon heading back to Harvest Valley, it is very important that you talk to Galavan here so he moves to the next area, because once he's there, he will sell infinite poison arrows, which is pretty freaking swell of him if you ask me. After that, we skedaddle back to the Shaded Woods so we can beat the next boss and then find him at the next location. Doesn't take too long to get to the Scorpioness Nagasaki, and this is an easy one. I did get blasted by her magic at the very beginning like an absolute fool, but other than that, you just wait for her to dig her claws into the ground or something, and you can shoot her like 2 or 3 times between attacks. Whenever she goes into the ground, just stand on the concrete and pop her a few times as soon as she comes back out. At the end of the fight, fight, I did try to get a nice old 360 no-scope for my Modern Warfare 2 montage, but I stepped too far off the concrete and got stepped on, which normally I wouldn't mind, but it almost killed me, so I was more frightened than aroused this time. Now that she's been defeated, we can move on to the next location, and we find our husky pal, who is now selling us infinite poison arrows, which are some of, if not the best arrows in the game, as long as you're not fighting something resistant or immune to poison. So we head back to Harvest Valley, where all the enemies are resistant or immune to poison. Great. Doesn't take me too long to get to the blob, who is, surprise, resistant to poison, so don't waste your arrows on him like I did for most of the fight, and yeah, no notes. Easiest fight in the game. Not much happens on the way to the next boss, but don't forget to set this entirely metal object on fire, because logic.
Who can relate? Woo!
And, don't do any of this.
I broke my back. Spinal.
I did have to be very careful fighting these fire throwing ladies because I'm pretty weak to fire and her thigh-high boots, but the fire attacks do a ton of damage. Once we get past them, I make it to the Baneful Queen, and it goes without saying that she is in fact immune to poison, and will in fact heal if she sits in the outer ring of poison, so don't let her do that. Other than that, it's not too bad. She only has like 4 or 5 different attacks, and I never really got the timing down on the spear attacks, but if you just stay on the outer ring and circle around her, you can usually dodge an attack and shoot an arrow or two. The best move is when she tries to give you head, because right after politely declining, you could hit her with 1 arrow and then she'll take a dive for it, and then you can hit her with 2 more. And if you're wondering, if you kill the boss at the same time as you die, it does not count, and you have to do it again. Thank you, Dark Souls. Now that she's finished, we could head to Iron Keep to get a tasty little upgrade. First, we gotta make our way through a handful of enemies that all die in about 2 or 3 shots. And once we pull some levers, spin some wheels, and grab a dragon bone, and make a sketchy jump where I almost met my demise, we can then grab the Barbie Ember. Take that over to this crackhead, and gee willikers, he starts selling infinite iron arrows that will completely replace the wooden ones. He also now sells large titanite and iron grade arrows if you decide to use a great bow, which I definitely will later on when I get one. Next, I head back to the Door of Pharaohs, turn this dude into a Beyblade. Once that's done, you just fall into this sand hole and, believe it or not, straight to Ohio. Blast the Crystal Boy for a dragon bone, and oh yeah, killing this big motherfucker in the shaded woods gets you another one, but I forgot to mention that earlier. While you're here, you might as well use a branch on this statue to get the Fang Key, open the door to this big bird babe, and she'll move over to where we just were and sells infinite fire arrows, which is convenient since the next boss is weak to fire. Right around the corner, we can grab another dragon bone off this rotten corpse, upgrade our weapon, equip our fire arrows, and make our way to the average day in Australia simulator. And I hope you like NASCAR, because this fight is a whole lot of going around in circles and not much else. Occasionally you'll have to dodge a little baby spider, and it could be pretty annoying trying to hit her in the head with her big old arms in the way all the time, but basically you just need to watch out for when she tries to smash you or beam you to death, but that's also a good opportunity to get a couple shots in if you're feeling confident. The hardest part of this fight is just getting over my arachnophobia, but it did give me the idea to start 360 no-scoping spiders in my house with a bow, so I don't actually have to get near them, so that's nice. After that, I head down the hall, kill this spooky fella, and head to the bonfire where they maliciously put an enemy in the room just so you have a chance to lose all your souls right after a boss fight. Why? Because fuck you, that's why. That was a pretty rotten thing for them to do, so I decided to go fight the rotten. Mostly because it was the shortest distance to travel from the bonfire, and I couldn't remember how this fight goes, as you can tell by the way I gracefully walk into burning pits of fire and eat his giant sword for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and possibly a midnight snack if I'm feeling a little peckish. I managed to beat him my first try since he's pretty slow, and walking into the fire multiple times reminded me of my fire arrows, which he's not exactly weak to, but they do seem to do more damage than my other ones, so I use those. And boom bada boom, almost die at the end, finish him off, and he's really gonna be rotting now. In hell. Next, I decide to live out my dreams as an exterminator and head for the Rat Vanguard. Him and his goons are weak to fire, so I equip those, but annoyingly, it just barely doesn't do enough damage to one-shot them and leaves them with like a fart of health left. So I switch to the Dragon Rider bow instead, and that does the trick. Anyway, just run around, popping some rats until Chuck the Ratman Liddell comes out, and I kill him in like 5 shots. My thirst for rat blood has still not yet been quenched, so I headed for the Rat Authority next, and this was the first boss that I really struggled with in a while, which isn't really surprising surprising because I always struggle with this one. Luckily, the most annoying part of the fight is pretty easy now, since you can just pop all the little rats as soon as you walk through the door, so you don't have to worry about getting poisoned in like the first 5 seconds of the fight. I would basically just wait for him to do a charging attack, try to roll into it, and then pop some shots right after. He'll usually do a follow-up attack if you're close enough, so you can use that to your advantage to get a couple more shots off. Once you beat the piss out of him enough, he'll throw up from the pain, and that's the perfect opportunity to finish him off. I checked Become the World's Greatest Rat Exterminator off my bucket list and headed to the only place left, being the Iron Keep. So I clear it out, make it to the Smelter Demon, who I was not excited for. Turns out I was being a scared little bitch because I beat him my first try. It definitely helps that with a ranged weapon, it is much easier to avoid taking damage from the raw energy he radiates, so I just do your best to not get close to him, physically or emotionally. And poison arrows. Poison arrows definitely help. It only takes a few of them, and you can just watch that health bar start ticking away. I was able to avoid most of his attacks by just dodging forward and to the right a little bit, except for that one. Man, that one. After that, you could rematch the old Persussi over here and get the upgraded version of the Ring of Blades. Basically the same fight as before, except my bow didn't break, so it only took a fraction of the time. After that, I frolicked my way through the level pretty easily, got my bussy ate up by this ravenous little fella, and if that wasn't enough abuse, this man just absolutely pancakes my cock and balls, just absolutely obliterates it, turns it to dust. Third time's the charm, I make it safe and sound to the old Iron King and promptly get my ass handed to me no less than 12 times. That is until I realized that just like Devin Haney, the old Iron King's hands are pretty weak. Also similar to Devin Haney, shooting him in the chest with an arrow will hurt him pretty bad, so either one works. Basically, I just hid back in this corner, popping shots at him when I could, but sometimes his fire can reach you and sometimes it can't, and I had a hard time telling which one was which in the heat of the moment. So I would just run out and roll through the fire, which was pretty risky, but it did work out most of the time. I managed to poison him at the end, so he was taking damage as he transitioned to his second phase, took one more shot, and that was that. Now that we've taken out the 4 main bosses, we could finally head back to Drangalang Castle, and these bastards have perfected some sort of invisible barrier technology that's really fucking annoying, to be honest. And after damning all these poor soldiers' souls into this bowl thing, the door opens to the castle, and we get access to this NPC. He sells infinite lightning and magic arrows and infinite repair kits, which might come in handy since the bows are pretty fragile. Ah yes, the classic completely empty 5x5 room that everyone has in their home to jerk off in. My favorite. Hey, I'm the guy from the cover of the game. Eventually, I stumbled upon the Hunter's Black Bow, which a lot of people consider to be the best bow in the game, and it's gonna replace the short bow after I get it upgraded. Then I make my way to the Twin Dragon Riders, now with 2 times the Dragon Rider for the same great low price. It is very easy. Just use poison arrows on the archer, and then switch to lightning arrows, which does a ton of damage to him, but apparently they're weak to like everything, so you could use whatever your little heart desires. Rider number 2 wasn't much more of a challenge, basically just does the same attack like over and over. He's got a lot more health, but goes down almost as quick as his blue brother. After that, I upgraded my bow, continued through the castle, doing a whole lot of shooting, some blasting, maybe some popping even, and it was a good time. I made my way up to the Looking Glass Knight, and it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. In fact, he normally summons more than just one other guy, but I killed him too fast for him to summon another one. I didn't even have to fight his little goon, he just kinda chased me around being all useless and stuff, while I just shot at the mirror-wielding menace over here. I probably shouldn't have used fire arrows though, because being in the rain makes fire weaker, but I'm a little slow and didn't think of that. Still got the upside down M though. This goes kinda hard, not gonna lie. Might screenshot for later. Next, I headed to the Shrine of Amana, which is normally pretty annoying, but using a bow is probably one of the easiest ways to do it. Eventually, I make it to the Frog Foreskin boss, who is weak to magic, so I equipped some magic arrows, and it was pretty damn easy. Only got hit once or twice. Sadly, you can't hit him when he's in foreskin mode, but as soon as he pops his little head out, you can just go crazy on him, and I was pretty happy with my performance. Until I immediately fell into the water, lost my souls, and the overwhelming sadness I carry returned once again. Now we could head on over to the Undead Crypt, where most of the enemies are weak to either lightning or magic, so I equip both of those, and if you talk to this light-hating Organization 13 ass fella without a torch in your hand, he'll insult you and then sell you infinite dark arrows, which is worth the verbal abuse. Also, a lot of people seem to really want to fuck this guy. Getting through the next area is pretty easy for the most part until these guys snitch to the wizard police and they burn you alive pretty quickly. You also can't break the bells that summon these assholes, which caused me to be a victim multiple times, but I was curious if it was possible with the Great Bow. Without going into the DLC, the only one that I can get that you don't have to farm for is by trading the Old King's Soul, which you can get only by killing the Old Iron King in New Game Plus or using a bonfire aesthetic. So I used one of those, smushed this guy with my butt, and fought the New Game Plus version of the Old Iron King. And yeah, same thing, but more health. So I head off to trade his soul for the bow, which she did for free this time because of my overwhelming riz, I suppose. I headed back to the bells, and yes, they do in fact break them with about 3 arrows. Alright, that's enough lollygagging for now, so I head off to the next boss, who is also weak to lightning. This is usually one of the harder ones for me, but with a bow, it makes it pretty trivial. All of his attacks in the first phase are melee, and they're super easy to dodge, so I just keep my distance, dodge an attack, back away, and keep shooting. Eventually, he'll give himself a defense buff, so I'm doing about half the damage now, and he adds a ranged attack, which I did not manage to dodge a single time. To be fair, he only used it twice. Nice. You also might notice these schizo notes on the floor leading to the lever, and if you pull the lever and talk to this
Continuing on with the top 10 best PvE weapons, today we have Dark Souls 2, everybody's favorite game. But these lists are just getting harder and harder to make because Dark Souls 2 just has a lot of really good weapons, and trying to condense it to just 10 is kind of annoying. There's so many amazing weapons that are just not going to make it to the list, but for me, I just picked the 10 most useful ones. And I did try to cover a wide variety. I didn't want to have a bunch of the exact type of weapon, but let's just get into it. Number 10, we have the Mastodon Halberd. Now, halberds in this game are just an amazing weapon class. They get really good range, they're relatively quick, and they get amazing movesets. The light attack combo has very good variety, got nice horizontal, vertical swipes, and you do get poking attacks too. The heavy attack is a very solid spin to win, and even the running attack is like a better version
AI edukácia. Čau, niekedy si prišiel, už to asi pravdepodobne nebudeš. Lebo som zrovna robil nejaké povinnosti. Update. Mám vás v piči. Ťažko vás mám v piči. To ste mi mali hneď po prvom kliku povedať. Dobre, ale ja som sa chcel pozrieť na The Finals. Keď tam začína nová season.
na mě působí. Nějak podle toho jsem to i takhle jako navrhovala. Vůbec nešlo. No ale a pak ho obětuješ. No. Jo, to je taky možnost. Jo, některé ty mechaniky, můžeš si to zapomenout, takže jako pak hodný ten vítr, ale to dá i udělat docela drsně. Záleží, ale jsou tam ty možnosti takhle. Takže tak, se rozhodla, že bude fajn.
Ještě 2 dní? Dobre.